we had a sinkhole at a property. And I think you have to have that mindset shift of these things happening as part of the business. And sometimes it's literally just you taking a phone call and then making another phone call, and it's somebody else solving the problem.
Welcome to the 0 to 100 podcast, where we talk about scaling real estate, becoming free, doing what you want, living a big life. Today, I'm Mitchell England. I'm with my co-host, Travis Dillard and Gabriel Hamill, and we have an awesome guest, Ashley Kehr. I had to ask how to say her last name, by the way. I was going to say Kehr. I was going to screw it up, which she wouldn't tell me which one for sure. So anyway, I think it's Kehr.
We all knew it was Kehr. You didn't do your research.
Never heard someone say Kehr. I've never heard Ashley correct anyone with Kehr.
Anyway, so I think it's Kehr. We're gonna go with Ashley Kehr. So anyway, I want to introduce Ashley just with a few highlights, but there's so much to Ashley that we're gonna take an hour to unpack it because she is truly an amazing entrepreneur. So Ashley bought her first property in 2014. Today she owns over 30 units. Much of her success is because of creative financing and partners. I can't wait to unpack that. Today she runs a property management team with over 130 units. She's also the author of A Real Estate Rookie, 90 Days to Your First Investment. By the way, guys, if you're just starting out investing, go get that book. Also the co-author with Tony Robinson, Powered by Partnerships. She is also the co-host of BiggerPockets Real Estate Rookie podcast. And during all of this, she's raising 3 boys in New York. I'm so impressed with you because it's like, I talk to people who are like, well, I can't be an entrepreneur because I'm a parent or I have kids or anyway, like I read your bio and I'm like, there are just literally no excuses. And before we dive in, I want to say we first met. I don't know if you remember where we first met, but we were in a Jeep in the middle of nowhere in Sedona and you were the driver. And I'm like, I don't know this girl. I don't know if she's
my life was
driver.
In your hands.
I was like, this is insane. The hills were, I don't know how you describe them, like cliffs. Anyway, you did a great job.
I'm glad I wasn't in AJ Osborne's Jeep. That terrified me. That guy was a nutcase. Remember that? You remember AJ?
Well, I think they called the cops, didn't they? Somebody called, or I don't know.
No, that wasn't AJ. I think that was Indar.
Indar.
God, that was Indar. Okay, that's right.
I instigated a little bit of that. I mean,
Gabe, you were in that Jeep, weren't you?
I was in Ryan Murdoch's Jeep. Yeah, there was a lot of shenanigans going on that trip. I mean, you put a bunch of real estate investors in Jeeps in Sedona. What could happen?
Yeah, it was amazing. I was nervous, and then I was like, I'm looking at you like, I'm like, is she nervous? You were pretty collected, I think. Maybe you were nervous inside. I don't know.
I mean, I was going pretty slow, so.
Yeah, you were, but we were like crawling down these like huge cliffs, and I'm like, I don't know if this is okay. I think we need training for this. Anyway, so anyway, welcome to our podcast. Like, I'm super excited to have you. Actually, it's funny. I was reading the reviews on the podcast and somebody said, your podcast is really awesome, but you need more women on your podcast. And I'm like, you're our first woman guest. And I think that that's true because I think women are more interesting than men. So anyway, I'm glad you're here. I want to get into your story. How did you start in real estate? Like, maybe take us back to before real estate. What were you doing? What sparked your interest?
Well, first of all, it's a lot easier to get men on the podcast. There's way more men that are investing in real estate. So you can't blame you for having the majority of men on. But I started investing. I had been out of college for about 1.5 years. I graduated college. I was going to be a CPA. I worked in an accounting firm 6 months, hated it, quit my job, and decided I was just going to be a stay-at-home mom, get pregnant, have babies. So I did that, but within a month of being unemployed, growing up, one of my friends, her dad was looking for somebody to hire to help him get organized. That was the job description. And he's like,
I love that.
You're an accountant. I think you could help me. And I was like, okay. And it was part-time. I could work whenever I wanted and I could work from home. So I'm like, okay, this still meets my be a stay-at-home mom goals and I'll make some extra money. So what that get organized actually meant was managing a 40-unit apartment complex. I had no idea what I was doing, but he was confident I could at least do the bookkeeping for it because I was an accountant. So I learned a lot of lessons. Within a year and a half, we took on another 40-unit apartment complex, then commercial properties, and I had to learn how to build out a property management company. I built all the systems and processes. When I walked into that 40-unit apartment complex, there was an office there, and it had a drawer full of keys, half of them not even labeled. It had all the lease documents that were in a folder. The leases were 1 page long. And then there was also on the middle of the desk, like someone took a piece of paper, a ruler, and a marker and made grid lines. And then at the top wrote each month of the year, then all the tenants' names down the other column. And then there was a check mark if they paid their rent or not. So this was like, first of all, it was great that I was an accountant, had bookkeeping, because I was like, I know exactly what to do to collect the rent and to pay the bills. So let's get started there. And then from there, I was like, okay, lease agreements, we need more stuff in them, and just built my way up to building out using property management software. So during this time, though, the guy I was working for, the real estate was just a side thing for him. His main business was automotive dealerships. And at the time I started working for him, he was acquiring a new dealership. And it was so interesting, all of the things that I got to be a part of and learn working for this guy. So I saw him take one of the apartment complexes, refinance them, pull the cash out of it, and use that cash to buy this new auto dealership in cash. And I was just like, wow, this is how it works. It's not like he had the cash sitting in a bank account or under his mattress. He was able to just, refinance that building, pull the money out of there. And he took me to the closing table the day that he was closing on the dealership. And he had me set up the bank account, put the cash out refinance proceeds in there, whatever. And that day in that attorney's office, he had me write out the check for this huge amount that I never imagined I would be writing, and had me have that experience. And that was just such a mindset shift for me right then and there. Okay, I need to do this.
Ashley, was that your first big aha moment, kind of having a front row seat, seeing how real estate worked, not just from the management side and the operations side, but to literally watch him front row seat do a cash out refi and go, wow, this is how it works. He's able to take that cash. I don't know whether you knew it or not that it was tax-free cash, right? Because it's a cash out refi.
Yeah, I didn't then at all. Yeah.
Yeah. And then go buy a business in cash. Was that the first aha moment, or prior to that, were you like, oh, real estate's actually interesting and I want to be involved more than just the management side?
No, that was the first, because I had only worked for him for 2 months when the time came that we closed on that property. So for 2 months, I was involved in the purchase of this, and then we closed on it. And I was very new so I had only collected 2 months of rent at that time as a property manager.
Talk about mindset. We talk about proximity with people on this tribe. You are who you surround yourself with. And I would venture to guess that not only what you learn, but just expanding your mindset. You're writing big checks, you're managing multiple units. 99% of the people don't do that. That's just a world they don't live in. By just being involved with it, although it wasn't your money and it wasn't your apartment building at the time. Talk about just pushing the outer limits of your mindset and just getting comfortable with that stuff and being around somebody that thinks probably completely different than anybody you've ever really been around. I'm venturing to guess that if you would go back in time, if you could work, would you work for free for that guy for 3 or 4 months just to get the experience and the mindset that you got? I mean, obviously he paid you, but
I was paid very little at first.
Yeah.
So it felt like I was working for free. And so after I built out all these things and really proved my worth was where we renegotiated my salary. But it was a lot of work. I was keeping track of my hours. And as a property manager, there was a lot of hours that weren't accounted for just because it was a phone call here, a run to the property there, different things like that. So,
but how many millions have you made just by having the right education mindset, just by being around?
Yeah, the things that I have learned, I've learned things not to do. I've learned things to do. But yeah, it was definitely an educational experience. And that is one thing rookies can do, is go work for someone, even if it is for not a lot of money, and learn from them. Even if you're working for a property management company, you're just going in and doing filing or something on Saturdays. You're still going to get to see their lease agreements. You're going to get to know the ins and outs of their operation. You're still going to have access. Like, one really big thing for me working for this guy was I did all of his financing. So anytime he needed a loan, anytime he was refinancing property, I worked with the lenders. So when it came time for me to actually get a loan on one of my properties, I knew exactly where to go. They liked working with me because I was always super fast to respond with what they needed. And it was so easy for me, even though and at that point, I had never gotten a loan before. I didn't have a loan for a vehicle. I had never gotten a loan on a house. And my first loan was on an investment property. And it was no problem because I'd already established that relationship with the banker.
So like, I want to say something. Like, you're really opening up my mind, because like in 0 to 100 Tribe, we talk a lot about like, hey, don't go get a job. Like, go scale in real estate, or go learn the game and pair capital with partners, or like learn creative finance, which is all great. But like, I think a little bit of an oversight, at least from my mindset, is like, what about a job on purpose? What about a W-2 on purpose? Or like a paid or unpaid sort of internship on purpose, meaning like you're doing it to learn the game, to get on the inside, to make those really strong connections. Because like, look, like what you did, like got you around the right people, blew open your mindset, taught you what to do, taught you what not to do. So anyway, I love that. Like you said, for rookies out there, one of the things you could do is go manage properties, or like go work with an investor. Like, what a great way to spend your time. And it's not a W-2 with a dead end, right? It's like, hey, I'm going to do this on purpose. And then, in the near future, sort of go build my own castle. Anyway, that's just a mindset thing for me. I love that.
And Ashley, it sounds like you kind of ended up in that position on accident, but you didn't stop there. I mean, you got the lessons, you learned a ton, and then what was next? So you worked for this guy for how long? A couple of years?
So I worked from him for 2013 to about 2020 full time. And 2020 is when I started doing the Real Estate Rookie podcast with BiggerPockets. Until then, I had never, the first couple of years I was investing, I was taking all of my cash flow and paying off my student loan debt. My husband at the time had farm equipment debt, and we were on the Dave Ramsey snowball thing, just paying off our personal debt of student loans and farm equipment. So my cash flow was used for that. And then once we had that paid off, I literally just reinvested all of my cash flow. So when 2020 came, I started working for BiggerPockets, doing the podcast. I'm like, okay, this is going to take up some time to do the podcast, all the other things that came with BiggerPockets. And then I looked at my cash flow. I'm like, okay, well, I can actually live off of this. I don't need to get to continuously reinvest it. I don't need to work full time as a property manager. So I hired a property management company to take over his properties and my properties. And they managed them for 3 years. And last May, so in May 2023, I left the property management company and I built out my own property management company, and I took the other investors' properties too. So I'm managing mine, any of my partners that they have, and then his too, and built out a property management team. But to be completely honest, I still technically work for him because he pays my health insurance every single week. And I do some tasks for him that are kind of outside the realm of property management. So just yesterday, I was in a meeting with him and his son, kind of like a mediator of looking at the business from, a third party view as to here's what we should do. And
that's good. You can mediate between Mitch and I.
We might need to hire you.
Right.
I love how you came in though. You came in to help organize the business, and now he's like, hey, I need a meeting to get some advice from you. Anyway, you've grown so much.
Well, here's one thing too that he didn't do a good job of is he put me in a position of where all of his information, everything that his businesses, how his LLCs are structured, everything like that, I am the only person that knows because I have helped him so closely work on everything. And he is just so scatterbrained of here's what I got to do this, and that he will call me and say, what properties are in this LLC, things like that too. So I mean, I have it all in Google Drive folders. I've put it in spreadsheets, but still, I'll get a loan officer to still call me and be like, can you clarify this and things like that. But honestly, there's still so much to learn from him. He has, created such a huge empire portfolio that I love kind of the things that he has me do. It's always like opening a new door for me as to like, when I get to the next level, like this is something I might encounter. So let's not learn it now, doing it for him. And then I'll know exactly what to do for myself too. So
Ashley, I was curious. I mean, you kind of just skimmed over, like you bought a couple units and then use that cash flow to pay stuff off. But I'm curious to what those first couple deals looked like and then how you transitioned to where you're at now. But then also, what's that next level of Ashley look like when you go to whatever that next level might be. But I'm curious about those first couple deals, how you found them, how you structured them. Do you still own those today?
Okay, yeah. So the first couple deals were right in the market where the 40-unit apartment complex was. So I was confident. I was close by to the other property, so I was there all the time. And I knew what rents could go for. I had contractors already I was using. So I actually partnered with the guy that I was working for, his son, which I also grew up with him too. And we used to fight all the time when we were younger. He was the big brother of my friend. And it's just like funny how it came full circle that we ended up partnering together on our first investment deal together. And so he had all the capital. We literally drained his savings account and bought our first property in cash. And then he went and put a home equity loan on his primary residence. And we used that to buy our second house. And each time we did a mortgage note to him. So he became the mortgage holder of those properties. He was also 50% owner of the LLC. So he's getting 50% of the equity, 50% of the cash flow, and then 5.5% interest on 15-year notes for the money he lent the company. So he made out pretty good in these deals. And I was doing all the legwork. I was doing the property management, we did little small cosmetic rehabs, things like that. But it was worth it because he was putting a lot of trust into me on his first deal. He didn't know anything about real estate. His dad didn't even know a ton about analyzing a deal or anything like that because I was doing all that for him. So
you did that work, but he came in as a debt and an equity partner.
Yep.
And then you got to realize the upside because you're willing to work for your ownership of the property.
Yeah. And looking like right now, I'd never do that deal with anyone, but it got me started.
He gets the assumed trust through his dad because you already did great work for him. By the way, you're like the integrator for his dad, which is like, I tell everybody, go find a really amazing integrator, which you are. But he gets the trust. He gets you're swinging the hammer, finding the deals, running the properties, and he's the capital provider. So what a great first way to get into those. Were those single family houses? Were they small apartment buildings? What kind of properties were those?
They were both duplexes. And then after those two, we went to the bank where I had a relationship with the loan officer and we got a portfolio loan on both of the properties together under one loan. And then that's where we just started doing BRRRRs, refinancing, taking the money, buying the next one, fixing it up, refinancing, buying the next one, and snowballed into that. And then actually his sister, not the ones I was friends with, the younger sister, her boyfriend at the time, and now a husband, he bought a rental property. So we started talking about it. So then me and him started buying properties together. Me and my sister bought a property together. We used her FHA loan to purchase the property. She had just finished college, got her first job. And so she house hacked that, but she didn't have enough money for a down payment at the time. So she was buying in a great area, great neighborhood. And she ended up doing 5% down. And with closing costs, she ended up needing $14,000 to buy this $140,000 duplex. So I didn't lend to her. I gifted her the $14,000 in exchange for 50% equity of this property. So she still lives in the property today. She pays like $50 a month to live in a unit that would rent for $1,200. And then the tenant downstairs pays the majority of the mortgage and property insurance and taxes. So
for those of you that are listening, there's some terms like BRRRR, that's buy, renovate, or rehab, refinance, repeat, right? Did I say that right? Yeah, that's a common term. Did Brandon Turner come up with that term and house hack? I mean, these are things people have been doing for years.
I think that was Gabe. I think Gabe came up with that. We're just going to start giving Gabe all the credit for all these terms, and then just text Brandon the podcast episode.
Right. Yeah. But also it sounds like I love the common theme here when you're getting started. And I want to dig into, because you're giving rookies advice all the time. And in the tribe, we have people that they have nothing. And they're like, how do I even get started? And how do I look at somebody like Ashley that has, owns 30 units or managing 130 units, or Gabe that, controls like 65 million in real estate. So I want to hear like the advice you give people, but like the common theme here is just like investing in business is a team sport, right? It's always a team sport. Kiyosaki said that, and Gabe says this all the time. We say that it's all about these relationships, and you're so much more powerful when you partner with people and you come together and you exploit each other's strengths, and you're all rowing in the same direction. Like 1 + 1 is certainly 5 in your case. Like what a great way to get started. And I can't even imagine the amount of equity and cash flow you built by just getting people together, putting your heads together, combining resources and getting after it.
Yeah. And I think the biggest piece of advice I can give on that with partnering is, first, read my book, With Partnerships by Tony Robinson. But the second thing is, like, it gives you options. So you don't have to be tied to one partner forever. Like if you say, okay, we're buying this duplex today, that doesn't mean down the road, every single property you buy has to be with them. I have 3 main partners right now. I have Evan, Joe, and Daryl. I will get a deal and I will look at, what am I missing to get this deal done? So I say it's the 4 puzzle pieces. Is it experience? Because maybe it's an asset class I don't know anything about. Is it time? I just don't have time to manage the project. Is it money? I don't have any money to actually get the deal. Or is it just knowledge? Like I don't know anything about this and I don't have time to go in and do the research on this. So what am I missing that needs to get the deal done? And I will look at my partners and say, okay, Joe owns a landscaping company. In the winter, he has more free time. This deal is going to go perfect over the winter. I have a lot of stuff going on. I'm going to be gone on trips, whatever. Joe, I'm going to partner with Joe on this because that fits what I need for this puzzle. And then I approach Joe if he, wants to do it, whatever. If I need capital, Evan's always a great one for capital. He, has a high paying W-2 job, so always saving money. And then I'll say, this is how much I would need. And he'll say, yes, no, I got it. And writes the check and we go and buy it. Then Daryl is great for sweat equity. Daryl has tons of construction experience. He likes to go in and actually do some of the rehab or actually manage the contractors that are working on the project. So having kind of that team of different partners where you can go and approach and see who would fit best for that deal, it is great to have those options too.
I love that you're talking about this because like most or a lot of investors just go like at this solo and and I did this for a long time where I'm like, I'm a real estate investor and I'm just going to go buy real estate and figure it out. I'm going to work hard, save money, then I'm broke, then I got to save money for the rest of one. But like what you're talking about, and I think what you're teaching young investors via your podcast and your books is like, look, like it's a puzzle, like put together the puzzle, and partnerships are so important. And we have people ask us about partnerships all the time, especially brand new investors. And by the way, if you're listening to this, go get Ashley's book on partners powered by partnerships. I don't think there's a lot of good books written about partnerships, and this is one. And like the best investment you can make, $15-20, whatever that is, to like elevate your knowledge. And like when I partnered with Travis, like I hate to say it, but my whole life changed. And I don't know why. I can't figure it out. No,
wow.
I'm joking. No, I mean, really though, like once I like teamed up with somebody, like it unlocked a lot of things in me. I think it unlocked things in him. Like finding the right partner is so crucial to this game, especially if you want to scale. If you want to go to 3 or 4 units, yeah, do it on your own. But anyway, I love where this conversation is going because this is a piece that isn't talked about a lot.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing, Ashley. I mean, you started with partnerships, and I think partnerships are a great way to scale. It took me about a decade before I ever partnered with someone. And I've had a handful of partners, but it's such a great way to scale, especially when they have a skill set different from you have. And I found that it just took me 10 years of investing before I started partnering. Have you bought any properties without partners, or do you like that partner model so much that there's no reason not to partner?
After I bought a couple with partners like my sister and then Joe and Evan, after I did that, I like couldn't wait to like buy some on my own. I was just like, I want something that is mine. I make the decision on, because as a partner, especially the one who's running the deal, you have a responsibility to the other partner to make sure that you are efficient and effective at the property management, everything. And I just wanted a deal so I could be like, you know what? I don't feel like doing this today. It's going to cost me $50 if I wait and do it tomorrow. But you know what? That's okay, because I don't want to go and miss my kids' play at school or whatever that is. So yeah, I bought a bunch of duplexes on my own that I own personally. And then one short-term rental.
What would you say makes a good partner? I mean, you kind of outlined your 3 partners and the skill set they have, but I think, we get asked a lot, and I've heard the question asked a lot, like, well, how do you find a good partner? What makes a good partner? I've been fortunate that I've had great partners, all with the exception of one, which was a very costly partnership gone wrong. But aside from that, a lot of it's just been, organic networking and being around people that kind of play in that game, play in that real estate world. But what kind of advice do you give to young investors on when they ask you, how do I find a good partner?
So all of my partners have been people that I've known for a period of time before investing with them and built a friendship with them, which you definitely 100% don't have to do. But for me, that has worked so well. But also you need to be so clear into what you need from your partner, and also what like the boundaries are going to be. Like, I would hate it if I had a partner that texted me on the first of the month asking me who paid rent, who didn't pay rent. It's like, you have a portal, log into it. You can look yourself. But my partners don't even log into their portals to ever look at anything. But I know that I like to have control. I want to be the primary decision maker on the deals. And so that is very important to me. So when you are soliciting a partner, you want to provide them with an opportunity and say, this is how you will benefit. This is an opportunity for you, but also be so clear as to what your boundaries are, your expectations are, and what you need from them and what you're going to give them. I think just knowing that kind of upfront, especially when you're building out your partnership agreement together, as you both understand that, instead of just jumping into the deal like, oh, we're so excited, you close on the deal, and then it's like, wait, how come I'm the one that set up the utilities, set up the insurance? You didn't do anything. I thought we were doing this together. So being really clear what everyone's roles and responsibilities are.
I got to say, I tried to establish boundaries with Travis and he crosses them every day.
That's not true. When you were saying boundaries and like,
so I know you were going to say, nope.
I have a legitimate question for Ashley, but I will say that the passive aggressive texts and phone calls from Mitch at all hours of the day gets old. But I mean, so anyway, so Ashley, I love that you said trust too, though, because like I've been an entrepreneur and I've been a real estate investor my whole life. I've never partnered in real estate until I met Mitch. But before that, I've had partners in various business endeavors. And man, a partnership, like we're talking about the positives, like a partnership can absolutely make you and they can absolutely break you. And some of the earlier partnerships I had in business damn near destroyed me. And so I love the fact that you said trust and becoming friends with people, because really friendships is building trust. And you can have all of the accolades and you can have all the credentials and look good on paper. But if you don't trust the other person and you also don't like share common philosophies, like Mitch and I are big on like lifestyle, right? But if Mitch was constantly calling me and saying we need to work more, we need to work harder, and if we weren't aligned, that would be absolutely miserable. So I love that you said that you got to be friends with people first. I think that's really important. And also, and you mentioned that you alluded to this before, and we say this all the time, like you can date people before you marry them. And like Mitch and I, we became friends first, and we talked a lot about business and real estate, and we realized we had shared values, but we did a deal together. There was no Cadia Capital. There was no let's grow a multi-thousand portfolio. Let's build 0 to 100. Let's not do any of this. Let's buy a mobile home park and see how that goes. And when we first closed on it, it went bad. It went to shit like really fast. And we worked through it, and we didn't blame each other. Well, I blamed Mitch secretly, but I didn't like vocalize it. But we didn't blame each other, but we fixed it, and we still have that asset today. And also there was some external things happening outside of our relationship that could have really fractured the friendship, and it didn't. So then we're like, okay, let's like start this company together. Let's buy real estate. Let's do this thing. But we had already dated like as friends, right? Not dating.
Yeah.
We put a deal together. And then
I didn't think those were dates. I don't know what you were thinking, Trav.
You always use the word date when you say do a deal first to see if you want to like do something long term with somebody. But don't.
I know. I'm messing with you. It's so true. We did go through hard times, and that first mobile home park, we started losing occupancy. We had given it to like this property manager that didn't understand mobile home parks. We're both staring at each other going, all right. And I remember thinking, this is going to be a test of our partnership. And this is going to be a good test. And we figured it out. But I think one of the things that we're clear about is like, we want to be partners forever. It's a long game. We also understand like there's moments in time or there's months where I know like Travis had some passive investments that were challenging for him where he's like, man, I gotta focus on these. I gotta unplug. And then I'm running point of the business. And I had a family thing, sort of a health crisis in my family that I'm like, man, I gotta be unplugged. Like you gotta focus on the business. Like, I think that like lack of tit for tat is really valuable, and we trust each other that over the long term, we're both going to be really strong contributors. So,
on that note, Ashley, you've had a lot of partnerships gone right. Have you had any partnerships gone wrong? Have you had any partnerships that?
No, honestly, I mean, I've definitely had my fights. Like, talk about a nagging wife that's complaining and calling and yelling and overacting and freaking out. My partners have experienced that side of me 100%. But everything has always worked out. And I think Travis and Mitch, you guys mentioned like you guys are in blind. You know, like you both don't want to work 1 million hours a week. And that is so important too. So like I know my partner, Evan, he's running dealerships. He doesn't want to be involved in the day-to-day, and I can't ever expect that of him. But also my other partner, we met and we became friends over a summer. And then he just constantly talked about how much he hated his job. He hated it. And he wanted more time with his son, things like that. So he got laid off in the winter from construction. And I said, okay, work with me for the winter. He worked with me for free. He was didn't ask for anything. He basically quit his job because he couldn't take unemployment because he's working for me, but he didn't take any pay at all. And then when it was time to go back to work, he had just lived off his savings, back to go to work. He said, I don't want to go back to work. And it was like, okay, but let's talk about what your expectations are, because sometimes you're going to have to do maintenance requests on Saturdays for us, or you're going to have to do this. So it's not going to be a set W-2 job where you get a week's vacation guaranteed, or you only work these set hours. It's going to be definitely more flexible. And so having that understanding of him being like, you know what, I worked with you through the winters. I had an idea of what this was going to be like, and I'm okay with it. And let's move forward and do that. So really, we had that trial period, I guess. And then right away, we bought an A-frame property together. He spent the summer managing the contractors. We got it listed, rented, live, and it is my best performing property. And he's so lucky because that was his first real estate deal ever.
That's amazing. First of all, I'm obsessed with A-frames.
Yeah.
This is a whole other like conversation, but like, so this is a short-term rental A-frame property that you guys bought. Can you talk about just like this specific property? I'm just curious what this looks like.
So it's in the middle of nowhere. It's about still like half an hour from a state park. But we never thought people would stay that far away because there's so many other options near that state park. But we did have a wedding venue that built up, which is about another 25, 30 minutes away from there too, that there's really nowhere to stay around that. But at the time, it was just, you know what, it was $49,000. It sits on 4 acres and it's just a little A-frame. Some guy you lived in the city would come out there, and completely outdated, but it had plumbing, it had electric. So we went in and we gutted it. We were about $130,000 into this property after the rehab. We had some hiccups along the way. We actually hired my new partner, his uncle, to be our contractor, and we ended up having to fire him. And the fact that my partner went there and fired his own uncle was like,
wow.
Okay, I made a good decision.
That's some loyalty right there. That's loyalty.
I hate confrontation. I did not want to do it. And the fact that he went and did it showed a lot. But that property, we got up and running. And like for this month, our mortgage payment on it plus escrow is like $700 a month. Our utilities with Wi-Fi are about $200 a month. And with landscaping or snow plowing, we pretty much break even at $1,000 a month. For the month of July, our bookings are $4,300.
Wow.
On a $49,000 property. But we had it appraised right at 130, but we ended up only refinancing at 80, and I left about that 50 grand into the deal too. But
by the way, like this is a great example of like a first, like, I mean, I guess what I'm trying to say is like, so many investors just say there's no opportunities out there. Everything's too expensive. Oh, interest rates are what, and like this property is like for very little cash, you know, you're generating cash flow. Which really is just another way to say freedom. You're generating freedom, and you were creative. You kind of went off the beaten path. You like found this opportunity. Anyway, I love these opportunities because so many people limit themselves by saying like there's just nothing out there, and that's what creativity.
And I want to be clear too, like I left $50,000 into the deal. So like if you would have pulled all the money back out, then, you know, your cash flow would not be as great because your mortgage would be higher. So I think it's always so important to compare apples to apples to know how much I left in the deal. But one thing that we did do was we refinanced right away. Like the property was finished and the appraisal was the next day. But if we would have waited and we would have generated some short-term rental income, we could have had a higher appraisal based off of the income it was generating. And then we could have went and had it refinanced and pulled out more money if we wanted to. But ultimately, we just want to like pay it off within the next couple of years and own it free and clear.
I love that. So I got a question about like mindset and like going back, because I think when I look at you, I think of like the expert. I mean, you've written the books, you run the podcast, the Rookie podcast. Like I feel like you're like the expert in like just getting people started, like getting people like that first, you know, your book about like the first 90 days. Like when it comes to mindset, where do you feel like beginning investors get hung up, and like what mindset can they adopt to like push themselves for that first property, those first couple properties?
Yeah. So there's two things that come to mind. And the first one is having a limited mindset of not doing enough research or not talking to enough people or not calling enough lenders to look. When I bought my first property, I thought you had to pay it in cash. I didn't know you could go and get an investment loan. I saw the guy I was working for do cash out refinances and then take that cash to buy something else. And I thought that's the only way. And it would take me a long time to save up that 70 grand for that first property. So that,
and then you find out real estate's the most leverageable asset on the planet, and you're like,
yeah,
oh my gosh.
So like if we would have took my partner's 70 grand and we would have used that for down payments on properties and gotten loans, like we could have scaled a lot faster. So understanding what is available to you and what resources you actually have. And then the second thing would be when you're getting started is if you have that fear, okay, you're afraid, which I also had. I literally thought the first day I closed on the property, the roof was going to blow off and the tenants were going to fall down the stairs and sue me. Okay.
Oh, I've had that feeling. Being so nervous the next day. Like it's all over. It's all over.
Yeah. So think about what that worst case scenario is. And then what would you do if that actually happened, and have almost like an emergency plan in place? Like, okay, I would call my insurance company. I would document what would happen. I would let them settle it out of court, most likely, you know, like all these different things. Or, you know, if there was a major repair, I'm going to beef up my expenses because you know what? The boiler is kind of old in the property. I am worried about it failing. So I'm just going to make sure that my cash flow for the first 6 months, you know, is just saved towards this property or whatever it may be to really bulk up those reserves. And a lot of time, money can solve issues. So having those reserves in place can really give you peace of mind.
I love hearing you say that. We recorded with a podcast guest yesterday and we were talking about this. Like, what if this happens? What if this happens?
Yeah.
90% of the time, like all the what ifs don't happen. Definitely not all at once. And kind of the conversation went to like, well, what if it all went right? Right. And it's like, things happen in real estate, but what if you don't pull the trigger and buy that property? What if you don't buy the next one? What if you never buy a property? And I feel like in most cases, I'm in a better position because I own real estate versus had I not just pulled the trigger and bought real estate. And most times, all the what ifs that could happen do not happen all at once in real estate. That roof doesn't fly off, that tenant doesn't fall down the stairs. And in most cases, you're probably in a better position because you actually bought that real estate versus not buying that real estate.
But you might have somebody in tidy whities with a machete. You just might have that sometimes, depending on the asset.
Yeah, we did have that. That was a Sunday call. My asset manager or our asset manager's going, "Hey man, we've got a guy with no shirt on, no pants on, running through the mobile home park with a machete." And I'm like, you should call somebody other than me.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I don't see a problem. I don't see a problem with this.
Maybe the cops. I know Gabe's like, this is just every day. So anyway,
well, I want to say something real quick about the worst case scenario is actually on the Rookie podcast, Real Estate Rookie podcast with BiggerPockets. We started doing an episode where we're just kind of like throwing them in every once in a while, where we called it horror stories. But really what it is it's worst case scenario happening and how someone turned it into a best case scenario. So like we just recorded one yesterday where a guy's the property burned down and his tenant had to be displaced. The tenant had nothing. And like he went through what happened, and it was the tenant had their own insurance policy. So they contacted their own insurance company. They got set up in a hotel. They got everything taken care of through their tenant policy. Then he called his insurance company, and basically he had the choice of take my check and just sell the lot as is, or rebuild and rent it out again, or sell it rebuilt. And he's like, it actually was a $45,000 difference. And he's like, my time for what it would be to rebuild and manage a project, and if costs go up and it ends up being more, he's like, it was worth taking that $45,000 less because I don't have to do anything else. I can literally just sell the lot and I'm making, very close to what I would if it was a finished project. And he's like, I held that property for 20 years. And, it was worth way more than what I bought it for. It always cash flowed. He's like, I'm honestly kind of happy. But like we've had other circumstances like that too, where a tenant destroyed this person's property and their insurance actually paid out to have it repaired because of what the tenant did to the property. And so I just think that worst case scenario isn't always so bad as you think it's going to be.
Well, I think like entrepreneurs, like a good entrepreneur versus a bad entrepreneur is like how you respond to issues. It's not if it's going to happen, it's how you respond, it's how you pivot, how you think about things. And because bad things always happen in any business. I mean, it's just sort of like the nature of the beast. But the other thing I remember what I was going to say, and like, I was just thinking about this, and it's like the sentence, like, fear is fast, real estate is slow. And what I mean by that is like, I think our brains are really fast to create these like game over, like end of times, whatever, like scenarios where we're like, oh my gosh, like, yeah, like this is all going to happen. It's going to collapse and the bank's going to come for my house and blah, blah. And the next thing I know, like your brain creates these scenarios. And I think if you're not careful with that, you can let that run away to where the risk looks way bigger than like a potential reward. And I say real estate is slow because like in my experience, yeah, like bad things happen, but like it's stretched over time. It's not like I wake up every morning and it's just like chaos every day. Like every once in a while you're like, okay, I got to deal with this issue. You've got time to respond. So anyway, like for new people, like be careful to let your thoughts run so fast because real estate's a long game.
Yeah. You're going to be fixing toilets at 3 a.m. and an animal is going to eat your tenants and the house is going to burn down and then you're going to be homeless and the world's going to end. Like at the end of the day, like, and also like one thing I was going to mention, I'll let Ashley comment on this, but good entrepreneurs actually kind of thrive in problem solving too. I think we had Pasha on, and I think with him, he's like, oh yeah, like let's, instead of getting worried, let's see how creative we can get on solving this problem.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think too, like you have to have that mindset shift of these things happening as part of the business. And sometimes it's literally just you taking a phone call and then making another phone call and it's somebody else solving the problem. Like we had a sinkhole at a property in the driveway. And we get this tenant that has her grandson with her and sends us a picture of her grandson sitting next to the sinkhole saying, there's a sinkhole. And my immediate response is not what to do with the sinkhole, but get that child away from the sinkhole. My God. So.
Oh, God. Yeah. Yeah. Hey kids, all gather around. Let's get a photo, why don't we?
So, and I'm just thinking she's probably posting this photo in one of the like Springville Be Neighborly Facebook groups of like, oh, there's a sinkhole, everyone watch out, and it's just like the kid is right there. But anyways, it's like, oh, what a sinkhole. I don't even know what to do. But,
right. So did you get a sinkhole inspection, Ashley, on that one? I'm just teasing you.
We don't have sinkholes on the West Coast. What the hell is a sinkhole? What? It sounds awful.
Right.
Yeah, what did you do?
Basically, like the ground is sinking in, but the reason it was because the drain pipe in the driveway was leaking and it was causing all this water to pool up under this one area. So the ground just started sinking because it was all water underneath there. So all we had to do was call the plumbers. They went out, they looked at it, they fixed it. Like it's expensive. It was an $8,000 repair, but it's like the same thing again. You have those reserves and you have to understand that your cash flow is not going to be consistent every single month. Like you're going to have to use some of it sometimes for capital improvements.
I was just going to say, I think it kind of what separates those that really get started in real estate and those that don't. I mean, I have a family member that bought a rental and it got broken into like one time. And they didn't even really destroy the property, but then they're like, I'm never investing in real estate again. Or they hear the story of the sinkhole and they're like, no way would I ever buy a piece of property because there could be a sinkhole and it could take the entire house, right? But it's like that real estate is still cash flowing for you. It's over time, it's still going to go up in value. And it's like, it's actually hard for me sometimes, I'm sure all of you too, like to wrap your head around like the advantage of owning cash flow real estate still outweighs all these sinkholes and roofs flying off and a house being broken into at the end of naked people or whatever, whitey tidies and machetes. Like, I mean, with that, all that being said, like, do you have people asking you actually like, well, what if this happens? What if that happens? Do you get a lot of newbie investors really tied up and kind of caught in this mindset or lack of mindset around all these what ifs that could happen that actually keep them from going out and buying real estate? Is that pretty common?
Yeah. And the reasons they give are all consistent with what they don't have confidence in. So like, if I don't know what to quote for insurance, and that's like holding them back because they've never bought a property in the area before. They don't know what the insurance would be. Maybe they rent an apartment, never even had a homeowner's or landlord policy before, what it entails. Or it's a rehab. I don't know how to estimate a rehab, or I'm not good at analyzing the numbers, whatever it may be, or the property management. I don't know how to do a lease agreement. Whatever they're not confident in is where they kind of really have their pitfall and their excuses. So that's where you hire a property management company, you hire a professional to fulfill that role, or you're taking on a partner, or you just like dive deep into that expertise and learn as much as you can. But like for the rehab portion of it, don't go for your first property into a full gut rehab. For my first property, we put some vinyl plank flooring in a couple of the rooms. And then we also put new cabinets and a countertop from all Lowe's stuff. So we could easily price it out. And it was super small, so it wasn't a big thing. But we didn't tear out any walls. We didn't have to re-drywall anything. We didn't rip out the shower or the bathtub. And it was just very cosmetic things that we could easily estimate. And my partner's roommate actually is the one that we hired to do the rehab. So it was very like, what is this going to cost? And like having somebody we could trust that wasn't ripping us off. So just taking baby steps, because there are deals out there where you can buy them below market value and not have to do a ton of stuff, and they'll already appraise higher than what you bought it for.
Ashley, I love that you said that about the mindset, going back to mindset with rookies, because again, we have a lot of rookies in our tribe that are trying to figure out their first steps and how they go, but they get moving. But like newbies tend to, or people that are afraid, they have these self-limiting beliefs, right? It's sort of innate, right? It's a software that they've been raised with, right? Maybe it's their parents or their teachers. And they almost find reasons to validate that internal belief. Like, see, I don't know how to do insurance. I don't understand commercial. That's got to be really complicated. And I'm not a math person. So I'm just going to stick to my W-2 job and, work till I'm 65. So it's interesting that you said that, like and we always say that.
Well, real quick, Travis, just one way you can go around that insurance thing is if you have a renter's policy, you have a homeowner's policy, or you have on your vehicle, some kind of insurance. If you have any kind of insurance, just reach out to the agent you already use. They're going to be happy or want to buy something to add another policy, and just tell them, like, could you help me estimate what a duplex in this area would go for, and maybe send them an address as an example that's currently listed on Zillow or whatever it may be, and reach out to people to help you.
And another question that I have for you is, like, we have like these different phases on how to scale. And the first phase is like 0 to something, right? Do something. And we have sort of 4 different ways of doing it. House hacking, maybe buying a plex and living on one side, like a small plex, maybe buying a non-occupied single family house, or maybe just investing with somebody as a JV that's an experienced operator that you can learn from your experience and all of the rookies you've talked to, because you are like the de facto expert on the rookie stuff. I mean, you host the damn podcast, which I want to understand how you got into that, by the way. But like, if someone is to say, like, of those 4 strategies, or maybe there's a strategy we're not even thinking of today, like, what would you recommend is the best way, the very first move for somebody to get into? Because we have some of our rookies that are like, you know what? I understand net operating income. I understand forced appreciation. I like cash flow of larger properties. I'm going to go straight to like a 40 unit of property. Or certain guys out there are gurus that are saying, your first property should be 50 units or above. And some people are like, no, just like buy a house. Like, and there's all these different philosophies on success. Like, what would you recommend somebody that has 0 units and they want to get in the game? What strategy would you recommend?
100%, if this is possible for you, house hacking. Like, buy a property, and it could be that it's, just an ADU. It's the basement. It's, maybe it is a duplex or a 4 unit, but taking advantage of the financing that house hacking provides you.
I think we all started that way.
All of us.
I didn't.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
that's all 3 of us did anyway. Yeah.
But I wish I would have.
Yeah, there you go.
Well, some people also think house hacking is, I have to have a bunch of stinky roommates and I've got a wife and a kid. And how am I going to do that? Like, I was 22 years old, so I did have a stinky roommate, and that was fine. I walled off half a garage and rented that out too. But like, what would you recommend for somebody that has a wife and a kid? And I think I also moved into 2 townhouse style, a duplex, and I lived in one side and rented out the other, and it was great. So you have that privacy, but so some people don't think of house hacking as renting out bedrooms, but you're saying, like, if you can get a small plex, and you can get really good financing for 4 units and lower. I think it's new FHA program, like 5% down. You can buy a 3-plex or a 4-plex, live in 1 unit, and rent out the other 3, and damn near live for free.
Yeah. So like, I don't know about as much as for like cities as to how this is an option, but buying compounds. So there is like quite a few of these available, at least in my area. And then I've looked at other random markets where it's actually large properties that have more than one house on it. And usually one is considered like a main house, and then the other one might be like a cabin or whatever. But that's the way that you can still kind of like have your space. And it's basically like you have a neighbor because the land is big enough. So actually the property I'm sitting in right now, my partner Daryl lives up at the main house, which is up on the hill. And then this cabin is down like kind of more where you pull into the property, and it's all set far off back the road. But this, we basically turned it into like, I'm sitting in the kitchen right now. And we turned this cabin so that it could eventually be a short-term rental. But we use it right now for our office, for, our flips, our property management, all the things like that. And then I do all my podcast recordings out of it. And so our property management company pays Daryl rent to use this as an office. So, and then it will eventually turn into a short-term rental where he's generating. So looking for those compound properties where there's more than one house on it.
Compounds are also really good for
live in this.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead. And I have a comment. But
no, go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
It was a dumb comment. I was.
Were you going to say like? Were you going to say like retreats and
No, I was going to say
He was
compounds
gonna
are
say-
good for cult. If anybody wants to start a cult, and I'd go buy a compound, and then we're going to put Mitch as the cult leader. He's going to wear a robe. It's
we've talked about cults on almost every podcast, so this is a
right?
common theme. I don't know how this is
100, not a cult.
Not a cult. Not a cult. That's our tagline.
That's going to be our new tagline.
Not a cult.
Buy real estate. We're not a
Hey,
cult.
but you know what? Everybody wants a sense of community. So maybe tagging yourself as a cult would not be a bad thing.
That's right.
There's a fine line. And all the real estate, investment cults, masterminds that I've been involved in have been very valuable. So, that's
very valuable.
That's how I think we met Ashley. So one thing I want to ask about, mastermind, not cult. But one thing that's really important at 0 to 100 is not just financial freedom through cash flow real estate, but time freedom. And so I'm curious, outside of real estate, what do you do with your time? I personally have gotten the opportunity to witness you rapping at the front of a yacht, and I've seen you in the water in the back of a boat on a tube, and you're just an all-around fun person. At the beginning of the call, we talked about you driving the Jeep in Sedona. So I know you do some cool things, and some of that is around the real estate community. But, outside of real estate, how have you designed your life so that you're able to go do cool shit with your family and the people that inspire you and that you want to be around?
Yeah, so I spent about 2 years from 2021 to 2022 just traveling and going to conferences and events. I went to everything. And like Gabe, you said, you haven't seen me in a while. And so that's because I used to go to every single event that was out there. I just felt like I would miss out on learning something or meeting someone or establishing even better relationships with the people I had met. Well, I've done that. I have this amazing group of real estate friends, you guys included, and it has, transformed my life of meeting people outside of the small town I grew up in, where there's not a lot of, real estate investors, not a ton of entrepreneurs to kind of connect with. But then after that, I've kind of the last year and a half or so, I've really focused on time with my kids. I will not go to an event unless I'm speaking at the event and it has really, it's going to be something intentional. I'm going to learn something from it while I'm there, but also I'm going to be able to give back by sharing my knowledge and my experience. And I've pretty much taken one of my kids to almost every event that I've gone to too. So sharing those experiences, but also it's been a great kind of education for my kids. He just turned 7, but when he was 6, he went to a BiggerPockets podcast retreat with all the hosts, and he's telling Kathy Fettke of how he's going to buy a property and rent it out. And, he'll have to pay some money to do repairs and then, and all this stuff. And it just seeing her face is you're 6 and you're telling me all this. That's awesome. But also I make them go on stage with me too. So they'll come up on stage. I'll have them ask the audience a question, and then whoever gets the answer right, they will go and give them a prize, one of my books or whatever it is. So they're 7 and 8 now, and they don't have any fear of public speaking, the two that love to do this. So.
The software you're downloading on those kids' brain is priceless. I need to do that. I need to bring my kids to some.
And just the people they're around, the conversations they're having, Remington, my youngest, he's the most comfortable at going to conferences and stuff. And he'll just be like, hi, how are you? And, it's just, even I'm not that comfortable doing that to a stranger.
Actually, I gotta say, I literally just got chills listening to that. And you're a truly amazing person. Your books and podcasts, and I know you're personally and a great, just all the things. I gotta say, I feel like that's so extremely impactful. And what you're giving your children is an inheritance. It's way more important than money. It's the inheritance of experience, connections, context.
Mindset.
That is so powerful. And I'm always looking for ways to get I have 2 girls for them to stand on my shoulders. And what you just said, I think I can learn from, and everybody else can too.
Yeah. My oldest, he's 10. He never wants to travel anywhere, and he doesn't experience any of this. but he's with his dad most of the time. He loves to farm and he can build a tractor from like scratch. So he's all the mechanical stuff. But for my two youngest, one other thing that's special is like sometimes they'll both go. And then another time, just one of them will go. Having that one-on-one time is so unique and such like a special experience for me and them.
Yeah. Hey, Ashley, I know we're getting to the top of the hour here. I had a question. How did you get on the BiggerPockets podcast? Because no one sent me an invite to host a podcast for BiggerPockets. I still check my email sometimes, but like, how does that happen?
Hit my spam box, maybe.
I mean,
I don't know.
started. Yeah, well, yeah. I'm sure they sent me. They've been bugging me to be on some podcast. I'm sure, but like, how did that happen?
Well, first of all, this is probably my second most asked question whenever I'm on a podcast. The first one is, how does someone get started in real estate? The second is, how did you get on the podcast? But, so I started an Instagram account and my sole purpose was because I wanted to be on the BiggerPockets podcast as a guest with Brandon Turner. And so I started it. About 2 months later, I got a DM from the producer, Kevin, of the podcast at the time saying, you know, I've seen you all over Instagram, and literally all I was doing was tagging BiggerPockets and Brandon and everything. And once in a while, they just share my stuff. I think I had like 3,000 followers maybe at the time. And
so you're a stalker, cult leader and stalker.
Yes.
Oh, I love this. Are we all?
Well, talk about the cult leader. When are you moving to Maui like everybody else? Because Brandon looks like a cult leader, and everybody's moving to Maui to live next to Brandon. So, yeah.
But you know what? Then everybody moves away. Everybody moves away. Like Taro moved. There's a bunch of other people that moved in. I was talking to one person. They moved back to Atlanta, and they said when they lived in Maui, whenever they would go on vacation, they had to go back to Atlanta because that's where their family was, to visit family. So like they lived in a vacation spot, but whenever they had time, they could go on vacation. They ended up having to go and spend it with family. So they decided to move back to Atlanta and then switch. But to finish your podcast thing, I went on the podcast, and right after that, they announced that they were doing a new podcast episode and you could submit applications. And I submitted an application and I tried out and I made it to the top 3. And then I found out that I got it.
Okay, so this is a hypothetical, Ashley. We ask everybody, and we actually just changed the question and made it harder. Okay, so the question is, you're broke. Okay, you're the hypothetical. You're on your buddy's couch or whatever. You're broke. You don't have any money. You have no network. There's no network, no money, right? I know you built a huge network, and you want to scale in real estate. You want to get started. And part of the reason I ask this is like we have people literally in this scenario where they're like, right, the last dollar they want to scale. What is it that you do? Like, what does your 30 days look like? How do you go get started?
So honestly, the first thing I would probably do is try to build a following on social media and build a YouTube channel and just continuously post because it sounds like I'm unemployed. I'm broke. I have nothing else to do. And I would say start to build that up. But in the meantime, I would probably be going and looking for deals to do seller financing. I'd probably I've only done one sub 2 deal, but I would say probably sub 2 would be more something that would be affordable to me. But I would be really scared of going into a deal, even if it is no money down, without having reserves. So I think that I would have to get a job doing something to build up reserves before I even went and did a 0% down deal.
So I love this answer because most of our guests so far too, and I'm always like listening really closely, sort of like hover around the same theme. And that is like, because you said social media, YouTube, whatever, what you're really saying is build your network, right? And then you're like, the second thing is you're like, find deals. And then the third thing was like, hey, I got to go to a job. I got to go get sort of money to eat today. But anyway, like I love that because I think that in the end, this game is best played by those who build networks, relationships, and find good opportunities via deals. So anyway, great answer, honestly.
Awesome, Ashley. Thank you so much for being on. It's good to see your face. It's been too long. I'm also not going to as many events lately, so I figured you were there and I wasn't. But it sounds like you're doing a lot of cool things. So I look forward to when we get to connect next.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for having me.